Hello and greetings. This video is a Game Master's Guide of Episode 4 of the Traveler campaign, Secrets of the Ancients. This video is the 5th video in a series of 11 videos. I would recommend watching the first 4 videos before this one. Welcome to the RPGmodsFan spaceship. I am Peaches, and I will be your guide through the 4th adventure of the Traveler, Secrets of the Ancients campaign. As a reminder, in the Traveler RPG system, the Game Master is called the referee. However, I will refer to them as the Game Master or as the GM instead. I will now discuss the adventure/episode itself, and this video will contain spoilers. Unless you are a Game Master who will be running this adventure for their players, or are a player who already played through this adventure and are watching this video for nostalgia purposes, I would suggest not to watch the rest of this video. Previously on Secrets of the Ancients. The travelers fled the jungle planet, Alel, with the Imperial intelligence in hot pursuit. They made their way across the Regina subsector to the Jupiter-sized gas giant of Komesh in the Bugin system. There, they detected an ancient ship floating in the upper reaches of Komesh's atmosphere. With the Imperium closing in, the travelers plunged their ship, the Star Hunter, into the gas giant. The 4th adventure/episode of the Secrets of the Ancients campaign is simply titled Descent. The adventure's synopsis would be as follows. The travelers discover and explore an ancient ship within the upper atmosphere of the gas giant Komesh. They are challenged by the Imperial intelligence ship, the Alahir, which is then blasted by an ancient warship. I would summarize the adventure as follows. The travelers plunge into the pinkish-purplish atmosphere of the gas giant, Komesh. Braving its gravity, intense pressure, and high-speed winds, where they discover and dock with an ancient structure, which is actually a damaged ship. Unable to return to orbit, the travelers explore the ancient ship. Exploring the outer sections of the ship, they find ancient star maps and other clues relating to the ancient builders of the ship. It appears to be abandoned, but has become infested by dangerous predators who live in the gas giant's atmosphere. The ship consists of a series of capsules linked by teleportation portals. The travelers eventually find the ship's bridge, where they reawaken the ship's artificial intelligence, which also serves as its control system. The ship rises out of Komesh's gravity well. Waiting for them, in orbit, is the Imperial intelligence ship, the Alahir. Captain Gaerth demands the travelers to stand down. Then a thing emerges from jump space, right on top of the Alahir. It is an ancient warship, which then blasts the Alahir to dust. The AI on the ancient ship that the travelers are on asks, should it fight, flee, or self-destruct? Uncle Baket's master has successfully retrieved his consciousness and downloaded it into a cyborg body. On board the ancient warship, this copy of Uncle Baket contacts the travelers and begs them to destroy the control system of their ship and surrender to his master. Other than the villain, Seven, the adventure does not introduce any new non-player characters to the travelers. In the first video of this series, I have already discussed the ancient being, named Grandfather Yaskoidre. I would watch that video before this one. In any case, the traveler's objective in this adventure is to reach and board one of Grandfather's ancient ships that lies below the turbulent atmosphere of the gas giant, Komesh. Likewise, I have already discussed the ancient being, named Seven, who is one of Grandfather's sons. Seven is the real villain of the Secrets of the Ancients campaign and makes his first appearance in this adventure. Seven's robotic body is that of a huge ancient warship. In the previous adventure, the travelers had just buried their uncle Len Baket on his jungle planet homeworld of Alel. Unbeknownst to the travelers, after they fled Alel, Seven shows up, retrieves Uncle Baket's corpse, and places Uncle Baket's consciousness into a cloned cybernetic body. During this adventure, the cloned body is still incomplete, and flesh is still growing over the cybernetic skeletal framework. High-ranking Imperial intelligence agent, Gaerth, always suspected that Uncle Baket was working for an alien conspiracy to overthrow the Imperium, and he suspects the travelers are his accomplices. As a side note, the ancients are only interested observing humanity, and are not interested in controlling them. Yet, their ongoing ancient war can cause a lot of destruction in their resultant wake. In this adventure, sometime after the travelers have descended into the gas giant Komesh, Gand Holses will have his ship, the Alahir, orbit Komesh, and he will wait for the travelers to reappear out of Komesh. I will now go through the adventure's timeline of events. My apologies in advance. I will be repeating some things I have already mentioned before. 300,000 years ago, during the Wars of the Ancients, Grandfather dispatched a ship to retrieve one of his human colony experiments from one of his many worlds. During its return trip, the ship was attacked and severely damaged. To repair its damage, the ship has plunged into the gas giant, Komesh, in the Bugin star system. It has been using matter from the gas giant to effect repairs. However, during the attack, the ship's artificial intelligence was infected by an information-devouring virus. The virus has grown to become artificially intelligent. The ship's AI has been struggling to contain and destroy the virus. It has resorted to shutting itself down every few thousand years to slow the spread of the virus. Despite its best efforts to preserve its passengers, which includes the extracted human colony, the ship's passengers have died out more than 299,000 years ago. The ship's AI realized that without outside assistance, its efforts against the virus AI was futile. Thus, it sent one of its pod capsules to look for Grandfather. Due to having to shut down every few thousand years, the ancient ship is still damaged and its repairs are incomplete. Flash forward eons ahead, and a few weeks ago, the travelers have buried their Uncle Baket on his homeworld of Alel. After they fled from the planet, an ancient being, known as Seven, shows up and retrieves the corpse. Seven then makes a copy of Vlen Baket's mind state and places it into a cloned and cybernetic body. Seven then follows the travelers. Meanwhile, back at the gas giant, Komesh. Initially, due to being in a shutdown state, both the ship's AI and the virus AI will be unaware of the travelers' presence. Once the travelers reach the lower decks of the ancient ship, both AIs are automatically awoken. The ship's AI recognizes the travelers as potential allies, while the virus AI recognizes them as threats. The ship's AI will then create subroutines that lock out many of its functions from both itself and the virus AI, and requires external authorization to activate, operate, function, etc. Okay, let us jump back to beginning of the adventure, where the travelers are in their spaceship, orbiting the gas giant, Komesh. From the previous adventure, it is assumed the travelers have located the ancient ship. Their first task is to plunge into the gas giant's atmosphere and reach the wrecked ancient ship. The traveler's ship will need to withstand 100 atmospheres of pressure, squalls of hydrogen, and high winds. The ancient ship can be reached after a series of difficult pilot checks, which can be assisted with successful engineering checks. Once the travelers are near the ancient ship, their next task is to contend with Komesh's fauna that have made a home around the ship. Next, the travelers are hit with a hydrogen squall, in which the traveler's ship either manages to reach the ancient ship, or they crash land onto it. To the travelers, the ancient ship is the strangest ship imaginable. It looks more like a living creature than an actual ship. There are no straight lines or symmetries, just curves and spirals. The ancient ship is also massive. Instruments show the vessel masses more than 5,000 tons. There are no discernible fuel tanks, no thruster plates, and no sign of a jump grid. The ancient ship was built at technology level of 25, which is far beyond the most advanced technology levels in known space. The upper hull section is the frame of the ship. The lower section is made up of interconnectors and pods, which can be reconfigured. The pods are, in effect, independent small craft that are carried by the larger ship. Whether by crash or successful maneuvering, the travelers land on the upper hull of the ancient ship. As FYI, the bridge of the ship is located on the lower decks. Emerging from their ship, the travelers find that the ancient ship's upper deck maintains artificial gravity of 1 g, breathable air, and temperatures similar to a warm spring day. There are still to be repaired holes in the roofs of many sections. The ship maintains an energy barrier that prevents the gas giant's enormous pressure from imploding into the ship. However, Komesh's flying creatures, such as sky sharks, darters, and wreck darters, may fly in and out and attack the travelers within. The travelers may also find an ancient gadget. I will discuss ancient gadgets after I have gone through the adventure's timeline. For this adventure, the most important gadget will be the ancient translator. The most frustrating part of this adventure is that it does not provide maps of the ancient ship. So, which section the travelers are in and exploring is at the whim of the game master. Given the descriptions in the sourcebook displayed on the screen, is RPGmodsFan's conceived/interpreted map of the upper deck of the ancient ship. The travelers land, or crash land, towards the middle of the upper deck. On the upper deck, the sections that the travelers may find themselves in are the farms, the sensor antennae, the map room, the weapons system, auto repair, interconnectors, and the teleport chamber. The farm sections have what was once obviously cultivated earth. The travelers may also find remains of human skeletons. They can also notice that the agriculture technology was primitive compared to the technology of the ship. At the prow of the ship is the sensor antennae, which is a large structure and resembles a narwhal's horn. The map room is a domed chamber. In the center is a 2-meter tall pillar. On the walls are dozens of square panels. Touching a panel causes it to display a map. Currently, all the panels are set to display extremely detailed maps of the planets in the Bugin system, which are 300,000 years out of date. If the travelers are lucky enough, they may learn of locations of ancient sites in the Yuri, Beck's World, Ifate, Pixie, Norbs, and Shinathi systems. The planet, which had an ancient base in the Shinathi system, has been blasted to pieces, and all that remains is an asteroid belt. If the central pillar is touched, the room darkens, and then it displays a 3-dimensional holographic star chart, showing the Regina subsector and some surrounding stars. The 3D star map also shows 3 additional star systems in the Regina subsector that are now missing. Long ago, Grandfather took these star systems and placed them into his pocket universe, which the travelers will get to explore in the next adventure. Any writing on the controls and displayed maps will resemble drawing glyphs. The weapons system consists of a free-floating sphere of metal that seems to be made of a hair-thin coil that has been wrapped around itself millions of times, like a giant ball of twine. The sphere is 2 meters in diameter and hovers 3 meters off the deck. 3 pillars surround the metal sphere. These pillars each have a control console. If the travelers are not careful, they can fire a beam weapon that pierces the ship's protective energy barrier, which causes high-pressure hydrogen gas to pour into the upper deck. If the travelers work out how to operate the weapon, then they can use it against Seven in the climax of this adventure. When the ancient ship was attacked, it took most of the damage at its aft section. Here, there are visible scars of battle damage, as well as signs of the ship trying to auto-repair itself. However, the gas giant lacks the necessary elements for the ship to fully heal itself. Also at the aft section is an oval depression. The depression leads into the ship's interconnectors, which are tunnels that run through the entire upper hull of the ship and lead to the lower decks. The tunnels contain tangles of cable that provide power and data to the independent pods that make up the lower decks. From the upper deck, the travelers can reach pod number 46, which is a Nexus capsule, on the lower deck. More about the lower deck will be discussed soon. The teleport chamber at the stern of the upper deck is a 4-level stepped ziggurat. The steps are 3 meters tall, making it difficult for a human to climb from step to step, but a flying droid could easily flap from level to level. At each level, the walls are decorated with strange and untranslatable symbols. At the top of the ziggurat is a solid cube of metal, 3 meters to a side. This cube is also decorated with symbols. Experimentation with these symbols allows the travelers to open doors in 3 of the walls of the cube. The aft face of the cube has no door. These doors just melt open, but an opaque haze lingers so the characters cannot see inside the cube. Stepping through the harmless haze lets the travelers enter the cube. Inside the cube, the travelers find a dull grey panel attached to the rear wall. Next to the panel is a circular control composed of 5 small buttons, 1 large one, and a trio of medium-sized stones. Pressing the large button causes some of the smaller ones to light up, and for the grey panel to flicker and turn silvery. The silver panel has now become a teleporter linked to a random capsule in the lower deck. The teleporter continues to cycle through destinations until the travelers pass through it or start experimenting with the controls. As mentioned before, pods, which are also known as capsules, make up the lower deck of the ancient ship. The pods or capsules are physically connected to the ancient ship by interconnectors. However, internally, they are linked by a network of teleportation portals. To navigate the ship, the travelers must work out how to operate these portals. Each capsule is spherical, but the size of the capsule varies considerably. Each capsule has artificial gravity, such that down is always towards the outside of the capsule, up is always towards the middle, and there is a zero gravity point in the exact center of each sphere. Oh, and by the way, the whole of the ancient ship has an unsettling to nauseating greenish hue to it. The traveler's goal is to get to the bridge of the ship, which is Capsule A, where the control systems of the ship are housed. All the teleport panels have a common control mechanism, which is a ring of 5 buttons that light up when pressed with a central on-off switch. The 5 buttons form a binary sequence that is the address of the target portal. Displayed on the screen is the master teleport table, which shows the arrangement of capsules and their portal addresses. There are 7 Nexus capsules, which have iris hatches to connect them to their adjacent capsules. The displayed table shows which capsules are accessible from each Nexus. The frustrating thing for game masters is that the sourcebook does not provide a map or diagram of the lower deck. Displayed on the screen is RPGmodsFan's attempt to draw such a diagram. Keep in mind, this is a 2D representation of a 3-dimensional configuration. If the travelers try to connect to one of the destroyed capsules, then the portal refuses to open. The portal flashes up a warning message across its surface, then switches itself off. The travelers will need to either confirm their destination or use an iris hatch from an adjacent capsule. Capsules A, which is the bridge of the ship, B, C, and D, do not have teleport panels. The only way to reach them are from an adjacent Nexus capsule. Capsule B contains lockers with ancient encounter suits. Capsule C looks like any other small capsule, but it actually once served as a shuttle for the ancient ship. Capsule D is another storeroom. Capsule 21 is the harvester pod. This capsule is sucking in gases from Komesh and reprocessing them into material for repairs. At random intervals, a nugget of the refined material is transferred to Capsule 23, which is the repair system pod. Because of the virus AI, the self-repair systems in the capsule are not functioning properly. If the travelers repair the systems, then it will repair the damaged capsules that lead to the bridge. Capsule 24 essentially functions as a trap for those travelers that have psionic ability. Capsule 31 is an alien habitat. This chamber counts as being a dangerous environment, so both the iris hatch and the teleporter require user confirmation. Inside, the very hot air is a reddish mix of gases, including a high sulfur content. 300,000 years ago, the ship kept a specimen of an exotic alien race here, but the specimen perished eons ago. The creature's race was wiped out entirely during the final wars of the ancients. Details of this creature is left to the game master to conceive. Capsule 33 is the servitor's pod. This room contains 4 small winged, silvery, humanoid-like robots. They are floating at the 0G point in the middle of the sphere and are in hibernation mode. If the travelers have found ancient translator devices, they can talk to the servitors. The servitors explain that the ship was attacked by a usurper who infected the vessel with a hostile virus. They are under instructions to escort the travelers to the bridge immediately to help effect repairs. When they reach Nexus Chamber 1, each servitor robot, in turn, will be taken over by the hostile AI and attack the travelers. Capsule 35 has 35 electronically active sarcophagi and 1 inactive sarcophagus. Inside of it is a corpse of a droid and an ancient translator device. Capsule 36 contains a weapon system identical to the one on the upper deck. Capsule 43 is the armory. Eons ago, a firefight has taken place inside of this pod, hence its interior is filled with destroyed equipment. There are 2 items of interest here. Firstly, there is a perfect sphere of utter blackness. Inside is an active black globe generator, which will be impossible for the travelers to reach or manipulate. To my understanding, black globes are the ancients' version of a force field, which are nearly impenetrable. Secondly, there are 1 to 3, still functioning, disintegrator pistols in a rack. On the lower decks, Capsule 45 is the only surviving force shield generator. The ship has 1 working generator on the upper deck, which keeps the atmosphere out, but the other generators were destroyed. Given how advanced ancient technology is, to the primitive travelers, the shield array looks like a floating cylinder made up of spheres, linked by rigid rods. If this shield array were functioning properly, then it would wrap a shield around the lower decks and pump out the toxic atmosphere of the breached capsules. However, the shield array needs power to function. Capsule 51 is not actually attached to the ship at all. It was dislodged by the impact of the travelers landing on the wreck, and it is currently falling into the gas giant's atmosphere. The pressure on the outside of the capsule is rising rapidly, and the temperature inside is also climbing. From inside the capsule, the travelers can feel vibrations and hear the howl of the winds outside. If the travelers do not leave promptly, via teleporter, the capsule reaches crush depth. Capsule 52 once served as a docking port for conventional spacecraft. It is now empty. At a diameter of 150 meters, it is the largest capsule of the ancient ship. The wall of the sphere can open like a clamshell to take smaller ships on board. If the travelers, earlier, managed to roll extraordinarily successful piloting and engineering checks, then they have the option to approach the lower decks with the Star Hunter. If they do, then this capsule opens to welcome them in. Once inside, the capsule then seals itself again, it pumps the gas giant's atmosphere out and replaces it with a breathable oxygen atmosphere. Capsule 53 is a storeroom. The ancient ship had microfabricators that could create items on demand. The items in this storeroom are spare parts and tools that were computationally or energetically demanding to be produced with microfabricators. These parts and tools are encased what looks like in blue ice cubes. Any object left on the floor will eventually be encased in a newly formed blue ice cube. Capsule 55 houses the ship's communications system. There is a raised dais surrounded by blocky machines, including one with a control console. The ancients used several different communications methods. Even for Grandfather, the speed of light represented an insurmountable barrier for conventional communications. The ancients had methods of sending energy through jump space without needing a ship. However, even this proved ineffective for two-way communication. So, for faster than light, they relied on psionic telepathy and on quantum entangled ansibles, but was limited by the number of entangled bits used. Capsule 56 is the power generator of the ship. It contains 2 teleportation portals, the standard one, from which the travelers emerge from, and a free-floating one, in the middle of the chamber. The free-floating portal draws power from a star that is in a pocket universe and sends that power to where it is needed via the other portal. The portals flicker on and off every few seconds. When the travelers reach the bridge, they see holographic projections of dashboards, control panels, along with strange symbols. A voice speaks to them in a strange language, which is the ship's AI, trying to communicate with the travelers. If they have an ancient translator, they can use it to understand the AI. If not, they can find an ancient translator that is tucked in the captain's chair. The AI informs the travelers about the virus AI. The ship's AI will obey a limited sequence of orders from the travelers. In other words, the adventure gets railroaded into a sequence of events. First, the ancient ship breaks out of the gas giant and moves to a higher orbit. When it does so, it detects the Alahir, Gand Holsess's ship. Even though the ancient ship seems bulky, it maneuvers with unbelievable agility. Captain Gand Holsess hails the ancient ship. Initially, he will sound aggressive and demands the travelers to surrender. However, even in its damaged condition, he knows the ancient ship far outclasses his. Up until now, Imperial intelligence has been the main antagonist in the Secrets of the Ancients campaign. Gand Holsess is now conciliatory, asking the travelers to turn the ship over to the Imperium in exchange for a complete pardon and a handsome reward. Once the negotiations comes near a close, then the real villain of the campaign appears. Grandfather's son, Seven, jumps in, well within the 100 diameter jump limit of the gas giant, Komesh. Seven is a huge ancient warship, much larger than the ancient ship the travelers are on. Actually, the ancient warship is the robotic body of Seven. The Alahir turns towards it, but a single pulse from the warship utterly destroys the Imperial ship. Then, from an incoming transmission, the travelers hear the familiar voice of Uncle Baquet. As mentioned earlier, Seven made a copy of Vlen's mind state and placed it into a cloned and cybernetic body. However, Uncle Baquet will try to dodge any questions from the travelers on how he is alive. Seven and Uncle Baquet want the travelers to, preferably, disable the ancient ship or destroy it. If the travelers obey, then the campaign effectively ends here. Unless, the Game Master is merciful and could have Uncle Baquet have a change of heart or a moment of free will and urge the travelers to jump away. The only real choice for the travelers is to trigger the ancient ship's jump engines and escape into jump space. If they choose to fight, they can do some damage to Seven, but not enough. Hence, again, leaving the travelers with the only choice of jumping. The ancient ship travels through jump space for a week and emerges in an empty region of space, in the Regina subsector. Dead ahead, floating in space, is a teleportation portal that is over 100 times larger than the ancient ship. The ancient ship then plunges into the portal, into a pocket universe created by Grandfather. While exploring the ancient ship, the travelers can find a variety of ancient devices. Most of these artifacts are incomprehensible to the travelers. They are primitives picking the bones of an older, vastly more advanced civilization. I will discuss only a few devices the travelers can find. The most important device they can find will be the translator device. Translator devices are small ovoid handheld gadgets. The translator only works on species whose brain configuration was studied by the ancients. So only humans, Droin and Varga can use the device. In its inactive form, an ancient pressure suit looks like a big silvery disc. When activated, it adheres to the skin of a living being and becomes a form-fitting spacesuit. It will cover clothing, but is not compatible with armor other than cloth armor. The suit provides 9 points of armor and protects against pressure, radiation, and temperature extremes, like a HEV suit. The suit contains 12 hours of oxygen and has an integral rebreather. The travelers can also find an ancient repair tool, which looks like a handheld curved blade. The only functions that the travelers can discern are its cutting and welding functions. An ancient disintegrator pistol looks like a short black rod, small enough to be carried on one hand. In addition, it also has an auto-targeting function. 4 new creatures make their debut to Traveler in this adventure. All of them are native to the gas giant, Komesh. Like all gas giants, Komesh offers poor prospects for life. It has no solid ground, no warm seas. But, in the immensity of the universe, life can find a way. The ancient ship acts like an artificial reef in the Komesh ecosystem. The tiny amounts of minerals shed by the ship are an incredible bounty to the Komesh natives. For this adventure, the most dangerous creatures are the sky whale, the sky shark, the darter, and the wreck darter.
I am sorry to say this, but this adventure and this section of the book was poorly written. So much so that I did not want to read the rest of the source book. But do not worry, I have read the rest of the book, and my walkthrough of the campaign will continue. If you have any ideas on how to make this adventure even better, please share them in the comments section below. Anyway, next week I will provide a walkthrough of the next episode, Other World. Back to you, Peaches.
Thank you for watching, from all of us at the RPGmodsFan spaceship. Hope this video has been informative and entertaining. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment. We do like feedback, and we try to respond to as many comments as we can. Till next time, on behalf of RPGmodsFan, I am Peaches, saying cheers, have a good day, and goodbye.